My hand shook so violently that the pen nearly slipped from my fingers as I signed my life away. Across the heavy mahogany table, my stepdaughter watched with a predatory smirk, already counting the millions she thought she had won. She wanted the Hamptons house, the company, everything, but she hadn't read the final line of the contract yet. Everyone laughed at me, or at least they did until I signed the documents and her lawyer read the end of the contract out loud. There, in that conference room, smelling of old paper and stale coffee, everyone looked at me as if I were some senile idiot signing her own death warrant. Vanessa was sitting on the other side of the massive mahogany table, her eyes shining with that anticipated victory that made my blood boil. Her lawyer, Ms. Pierce, a woman in a sharp gray suit and blood-red lipstick, clutched the folder of documents like she was holding a trophy. And me? I was just there, 67 years old, being treated like a foolish old woman who had finally gotten a reality check. "Are you sure, Mrs. Collins?" Mr. Harrison, my lawyer of over 15 years, touched my arm gently, but his brown eyes were serious, almost pleading. "You can still reconsider, Martha. You don't have to do this." The silence that fell over that room was so heavy I could hear the tick-tock of the wall clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Every second echoed like a hammer blow against my chest. Vanessa exchanged a look with her lawyer. "Ms. Pierce, anything?" And I saw it. I clearly saw the contained smile at the corners of her mouth, that smile of someone who already knew she had won, of someone who believed I was weak, naive, defeated. Sometimes people mistake kindness for weakness. They see gray hair and assume the mind is fading too. But they forget that age brings wisdom, and wisdom is a dangerous weapon. "I am sure," I replied, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "If you want to know how a 67-year-old widow transformed humiliation into justice, stay until the end of this story. And if you like real stories like this, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any tales of overcoming adversity and dignity." I picked up the Mont Blanc pen that Mr. Harrison had placed on top of the documents. It was heavy, cold to the touch. "Richard gave me that pen on our 10th wedding anniversary. So you can sign all our dreams into reality together," he had said, with that gentle smile that won me over. But Richard wasn't here anymore, and his daughter, that 36-year-old woman who barely knew her own father, was about to take everything we built together. "Excellent decision, Mrs. Collins," said Mrs. Pierce, pushing 3 more copies of the contract in my direction. Her nails were long, painted dark red, making an irritating scratching noise against the paper. "You are doing the right thing, avoiding an unnecessary legal battle." Unnecessary. The word echoed in my head like a slap. Unnecessary was the pain that woman had caused me in the last 4 months. Unnecessary was the way Vanessa showed up at her own father's funeral, faking a grief she never felt in life. Unnecessary was the smear campaign she spread through the family, painting me as a gold digger who robbed her father. But I didn't say any of that. I just took a deep breath, feeling the air conditioning, cold in the office, prickle my skin. "I'm going to sign," I repeated, positioning the tip of the pen over the dotted line. On the other side of the table, Vanessa leaned forward. She was wearing a black dress, fake mourning, and a pearl necklace that I myself had given her as a gift on a Christmas she didn't even bother to show up for. Her makeup was flawless, as always. Vanessa was always pretty. I couldn't deny that. Blonde hair, blown out, perfect skin, the body of someone who hits the gym every day. But her beauty never reached her eyes. Never. "Finally," she murmured, and I don't know if she wanted me to hear or not. "Finally, this woman is going to understand she has no right to anything that was my father's." I felt my stomach turn. Mr. Harrison closed his eyes for a second, as if he felt physical pain. But I signed it. With slow, deliberate movements, I signed the first page, then the second, the third. My signature, Martha Collins, remained registered there on those papers that transferred everything. The beach house in Montauk, which I renovated with my own money. the 3 pharmacies in Queens that I helped expand with the money from the sale of my own company, the 2 apartments on the Upper East Side that we bought together, Richard and me, the Mercedes that I gave him as a birthday gift, even the works of art that decorated our house, and that I chose one by one at auctions and galleries. Everything. She wanted everything. And there, on that 15th of April, 2024, it seemed she was going to get it. When I finished signing, I pushed the documents back to the center of the table. Miss Pierce snatched them up greedily, her eyes scanning the pages quickly, verifying every signature like someone counting cash. "Perfect," she said, satisfied. "Now, Miss Vanessa signs here, here, and here." Vanessa grabbed her own pen, a brand new Mont Blanc, probably bought with the money from the credit card Richard paid for her, even though she had a job, or claimed to have one. I never knew for certain if Vanessa actually worked or just pretended to. She sighed with that smirk on her lips, small, discreet, but I saw it, impossible not to see. "Done," she said, stowing the pen in her Prada bag. "Now everything is resolved." Resolved. As if the 17 years I lived with Richard were just a problem to be resolved. As if I were just an obstacle between her and the money. It's funny how people show their true colors when money is on the table. The masks fall off, and suddenly, family loyalty has a price tag. Ms. Pierce gathered all the documents, organizing them inside the leather folder. She was visibly satisfied. Probably her fees would be fat. Very fat. "Well," she started, already standing up, "I think we can consider this matter closed. Within 2 business days, the transfer of title will be—" "Ms. Pierce," Mr. Harrison interrupted her, and there was something in his tone that made everyone in the room fall silent. He had a neutral expression, but I knew that man. I knew that look. It was the same look he had when he was about to destroy an argument in court. "Yes," Ms. Pierce seemed slightly irritated by the interruption. "Could you do the favor of reading, out loud, Clause 15 of the contract, so that everyone present here has knowledge of the full agreement?" For the first time since we entered that room, I saw Ms. Pierce's confidence waver. It was just a second, a brief blinking of eyes, a hesitation almost imperceptible. "Clause 15, she repeated, "but it's just a standard clause regarding—" "I insist," said Mr. Harrison, his calm voice now firmer. "It is important that Miss Vanessa completely understands what she just signed." Vanessa frowned. "What is he talking about? You reviewed everything, didn't you?" Yes, of course I reviewed it." Ms. Pierce opened the folder again, flipping through the pages with fingers that now seemed less sure. And I just watched, quiet, waiting. Because after 4 months of being humiliated, disrespected, and treated like garbage by the daughter of the man I loved, the moment of truth had finally arrived. The moment for Vanessa to discover that not everything is as it seems, and that underestimating a 67-year-old woman who had already built an empire once in her life was the biggest mistake she could have made. Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and said, "You can start reading, Mrs. Pierce. We are waiting." But before telling you what happened in that room, I need you to understand who I am, who I really am. Not the poor widow Vanessa painted for everyone, not the second wife trying to steal the inheritance from the poor daughter. My name is Martha Collins. I am 67 years old, and every wrinkle on my face tells a story of struggle, of conquest, of starting over. I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the daughter of a steel worker and a seamstress. My mother made dresses for the ladies in town, and I grew up watching her transform scraps of fabric into works of art. I learned early on that with talent, work, and courage, we can create something from nothing. At 22, I graduated as a teacher. I taught in public school for 10 years, earning peanuts, but loving every minute with those kids. It was in one of those schools that I discovered my true vocation, children's fashion. I saw those little ones arriving in faded, ill-fitting clothes and thought, why does children's clothing need to be ugly or incredibly expensive? Why can't there be a middle ground? In 1982, at 32 years old, I opened my first store. Small, tiny actually, 150 square feet in a popular shopping center in Scranton. I named it Little Stars. I sold children's clothes with good quality and fair prices. I designed some models myself, inspired by what my mother taught me. I worked like crazy. I woke up at 5 in the morning, stayed until midnight sewing, negotiating with suppliers, taking care of the register. I didn't have a husband. I didn't have children. I only had my dream. And the dream grew. In 10 years, Little Stars had 5 locations. In 15 years, there were 12. I supplied to department stores, to other shops. I had a small factory with 40 employees. I wasn't rich, but I was independent, very independent. I never married. I had boyfriends, some even serious, but none made me want to trade my freedom for a ring. Until 2005, at 48 years old, I met Richard. It was at a charity event for the Chamber of Commerce in New York City. I was there representing my company. He represented his pharmacy chain, Richard Miller. 50 years old, widower for 3 years, owner of 2 pharmacies in Queens. He wasn't handsome in the classic sense. He was shorter than me, had the belly of someone who liked a cold beer on the weekend, wore reading glasses, and had hair already turning gray. But when he smiled at me that night and said, "Are you the owner of Little Stars? My niece only wants to wear clothes from there," I felt something I had never felt before. Calm. Peace. As if I had finally found a safe harbor. We started talking, and the hours passed without me noticing. Richard was the widower of his first wife, Annabeth, who died of a massive brain aneurysm 3 years prior. He had a daughter, Vanessa, who at that time was 19 and lived with her maternal grandmother in New Jersey. She didn't want to stay with me after her mother died, he told me that first night, with a sadness in his eyes that broke my heart. He said I reminded her too much of her mother, that it was painful. She prefers to be with her grandma. I should have paid more attention to that detail. I should have realized that a daughter who abandons her father in a moment of greatest pain might not be as sweet a person as Richard believed. But I was falling in love. Love is a beautiful fog. It descends softly, blurring the sharp edges of reality until all you see is what you want to see. We dated for 2 years. Richard was kind, attentive, hardworking. We shared the same values: honesty, hard work, family. He respected my independence, never tried to control me or diminish my achievements. On the contrary, he was proud when I told him about a new contract closed, a new store opened. "You are incredible, Martha," he would say, kissing my forehead. "An incredible woman." In 2007, at 50 years old, I married for the first and only time in my life. It was a simple ceremony, just close friends and family. Vanessa was there, of course. She was already 21, studying marketing at a private college that Richard paid for. She was polite during the wedding, went around greeting guests, even smiled in the photos. But I felt it. I felt it in the looks she shot me when she thought I wasn't watching, in the silences when I tried to join the conversation, in the way she referred to me always as Martha, never as stepmom, never with any title that indicated kinship. To her, I was a stranger who had invaded her father's life. But Richard was happy, so I swallowed my discomfort and moved forward. In the first years of marriage, things were wonderful. Richard and I completed each other. He was more of a homebody. I was more adventurous. He liked staying home watching movies. I liked to travel. So we found a balance. We traveled a few times a year and stayed home just as much. In 2010, we made an important decision together. I was 53 and tired. 28 years managing Little Stars left me exhausted. The stores were doing well, but the market was changing. Shopping malls, e-commerce, big chains swallowing small businesses. "Sell," Richard advised me one night while we drank wine on the balcony of our apartment in Brooklyn Heights. "You built an empire, honey, but you deserve to rest. Enjoy life." I sold Little Stars for $2 million. It was painful, like saying goodbye to a child, but it was also liberating. And with that money, Richard and I made plans. We invested part in the expansion of his pharmacies. We bought a third unit, modernize the previous two. I came in with the cash, he with the expertise. We were partners, in fact, even if on paper the pharmacies remained in his name. Something I accepted without questioning. After all, we were married. What was his was mine, and vice versa. Or at least, that was what I believed. With the rest of the money, we bought the beach house in Montauk, a beautiful house, oceanfront, with 4 bedrooms and a huge porch where we watched the sunset. It cost $800,000 at the time. We invested another $400,000 in renovations. I chose every detail, every tile, every piece of furniture. That house was our refuge, our little piece of paradise. In 2012, we also bought 2 apartments on the Upper East Side, an investment. We rented both out. The income supplemented our future retirement. Life was good. We weren't billionaires, but we were comfortable. And more importantly, we were happy. Richard was my partner, my best friend, my love. We woke up together, had coffee together, sometimes worked together at the pharmacies. On weekends, we went to Montauk. We walked on the beach holding hands, had dinner watching the stars, made plans for the future. When I retire, he would say, I want to live in Montauk for good. Just you and me. No stress, no worry, just peace. I dreamed of that future too. Vanessa? Vanessa appeared every now and then. Birthdays, Christmas, always polite, always distant. She graduated in marketing, started working at an agency, then changed jobs about 3 more times. She dated a few guys. None lasted long. Richard always paid some bill for her here, a course there, a car when hers broke down. I never complained. She was his daughter. He had the right to help. But I noticed that Vanessa only called when she needed money. I noticed she never asked how her father was, if he was in good health, if he was happy. The conversations were always about her problems, her needs, her plans. She's still processing her mother's death, Richard justified. One day she will mature. I wasn't sure about that, but I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to be the evil stepmother of fairy tales. Years passed. Richard and I grew old together, and it was beautiful. He at 65, me at 63. We made a will together in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. We left everything clear, registered, right. Half for me, half for Vanessa after my death. While I lived, everything would be mine because I helped build that wealth. Richard even left a letter, registered at the notary, acknowledging my investments in the companies, in the beach house, in the apartments. Everything documented, everything right. It's so you can be calm, my love, he said, holding my hand. If something happens to me, you are protected. I kissed that man with so much gratitude. He understood me, respected me, protected me, or at least tried to, because in January of 2024, our life turned upside down. Richard started feeling abdominal pains, weight loss, extreme fatigue. We insisted it was just stress, age, but when his skin started to yellow, we ran to the hospital. Pancreatic cancer, advanced stage. The doctor gave us 6 months, maybe a year, with treatment. Richard lasted 5.5 months. And in those 5.5 months, who was by his side? Who changed the geriatric diapers when he lost control of his bladder? Who held his head while he vomited because of the chemotherapy? Who slept in the hospital chair? Who gave up everything to be with him until the last breath? Me, Martha, the second wife. Vanessa? Vanessa appeared 3 times during the hospitalization. 3. Always with excuses. Work, appointments, tiredness. On Richard's last day of life, December 10th, 2023, I was alone with him in the hospital room. It was already dawn. He was sedated, breathing with difficulty. He opened his eyes one last time, recognized me, and whispered, "Martha, you were the best thing in my life." I held his hand until the last heartbeat, and when he went, a part of me died along with him. But I didn't know the true hell was just beginning, because 4 days later, at the wake, Vanessa appeared in black from head to toe, crying tears that I knew were fake. And it was there, next to her own father's casket that she looked at me and said, "Now you'll see what it is to be truly alone." Richard's funeral was on a gray December day, one of those days where the New York sky hangs heavy, loaded, as if even nature was in mourning. I had cried so much in the last 72 hours that my eyes looked like two swollen pieces of coal. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could only sit there next to the casket, looking at the face of the man I loved for 17 years. He seemed at peace, finally without pain, finally resting. People came and went, friends, relatives, employees from the pharmacies, all saying the same empty words. "My condolences. He is in a better place. Stay strong, Martha." I just nodded, thanked them mechanically, and went back to looking at Richard. That was when she arrived. Vanessa entered the funeral home parlor at 10 in the morning, wearing a long-sleeved black dress and enormous dark sunglasses. Her black hair was tied in an elegant bun, makeup discreet but flawless. She came accompanied by two friends I had never seen in my life. She didn't come accompanied by a boyfriend, didn't come accompanied by any relative from her mother's family. Just those two women, in high heels and designer bags, who seemed to be there more out of curiosity than solidarity. Vanessa walked to the casket, stopped, stood there for about 30 seconds looking at her father, and then she started to cry. It wasn't a discreet cry, it was a theatrical weep, one of those with loud sobs, hands on the face, weak knees. One of the friends ran to support her, the other grabbed tissues from her bag. "Daddy!" she screamed, throwing herself over the casket. "Daddy, no!" "Why did you leave me? Why?" I watched her from where I was seated, and a part of me, a cruel part, I must admit, wanted to scream. Where were you when he begged for a visit in the hospital? Where were you when he cried because his daughter wouldn't answer the phone? But I said nothing. I just stayed there, quiet, sitting in a mixture of sadness and anger that made me nauseous. Vanessa finally pulled away from the casket, supported by her friends. She took off the dark glasses. Her eyes were red, but I knew makeup tricks. I knew eye drops that make eyes tear up. I knew an actress when I saw one. She looked around the hall until she located me, and then came in my direction. "Martha," she said, her voice choked. "How are you?" How was I? I was destroyed. I was broken inside. I was feeling as if they had ripped my heart out of my chest and stomped on it. "I'm coping," I replied, my voice coming out hoarse. Vanessa sat next to me, very close, invading my personal space. She smelled of expensive French perfume, that Chanel No. 5 that cost a fortune. "It must be very hard for you," she said, grabbing my hand. Her hand was cold. "Losing a husband like this?" There was something in her tone, something that made my stomach churn. "It is hard," I agreed, trying to pull my hand back, but she held it firmly. "Especially considering you have no one else, right?" Vanessa tilted her head, as if she were being genuinely sympathetic. "No children, no close family. It must be scary to be alone at this age." At this age, as if 67 years were synonymous with decrepitude. "I'm going to be fine," I replied, finally managing to free my hand. "Of course you are," she smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And look, I wanted you to know that, well, I know you and my father were married, but he always told me that I was the most important thing in his life, his blood. You understand, right?" I felt as if she had slapped me. "Vanessa, I don't think this is the moment to—" No, of course," she interrupted, raising her hands in an appeasing gesture. "Sorry, you're right. It's just that, well, there are some things we will need to resolve. About the inheritance, the assets, those things. But we can talk later. Today is a day of mourning." And she stood up, gave a kiss in the air near my cheek, and went to talk to other people. I sat there, trembling. Not from cold, from rage. The burial was worse. At Greenwood Cemetery, under a hot midday sun, I watched Richard be buried next to his first wife, Annabeth, Vanessa's mother. I had suggested to Richard, years ago, that we buy a plot of our own, for just the two of us, but he had been sentimental. "I promised Annabeth I would stay beside her," he explained with guilt in his eyes. "But you'll stay on the other side, love. We'll all be together." At the time, I accepted. What could I say? That I was jealous of a dead woman? But there, watching Richard's casket go down into the earth next to Annabeth, while Vanessa cried dramatically over her mother's tombstone, I felt erased, as if my place in Richard's life had always been temporary, as if I were just an intermission between his real family. After the ceremony, as people started to leave, Vanessa approached me again. This time she was alone. The friends had already gone. "Martha," she said, putting on the dark glasses. Her eyes were dry now, completely dry. "I think we need to talk soon about my father's assets." "Vanessa, there is a will," I replied, too tired for games. "Your father left everything very clear." She laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "Ah, yes, the will. The one that says you keep everything while you're alive." She stepped closer, and her voice became low, venomous. "But look closely, Martha. You have no children, no family, and now you don't have a husband anymore. So, when you die, and let's be honest, at your age, that could happen at any moment, who does it all go to?" "To me." My blood ran cold. "So I was thinking," she continued, smiling now, "why wait? Why don't you transfer everything to me now and avoid a future headache? You can keep a part, sure, something to live comfortably in your final years, but the rest is mine by right. I am his blood. You are just the second wife." And then she turned and walked away, leaving me there, alone among the graves, feeling as if the ground had opened up beneath my feet. 2 weeks after the funeral, my phone rang at 9 at night. I was in the living room, trying to watch something on television without really paying attention. The house seemed too big, too silent without Richard. Every room echoed his absence. The armchair where he sat to read the paper, the coffee mug I still didn't have the courage to put away, the smell of his soap that still lingered in the bathroom. When I saw Vanessa's name on the screen, my stomach knotted. "Hello?" "Martha, hi!" Her voice was strangely cheerful. "Sorry to call late. Are you busy?" "Busy doing what? Crying? Missing my husband?" "No," I replied. "You can talk." "Look, I was thinking we really need to talk about everything. Dad's assets, the situation, those things." She paused. "How about dinner here at my place tomorrow? I'll cook, we can talk calmly, resolve everything in a civilized way." Something in my chest tightened. But I also wanted to resolve this. I wanted Vanessa to understand once and for all that I had rights, that I wasn't just going to disappear or hand everything over on a silver platter. "Okay," I agreed. "What time?" 8 o'clock? I live in Midtown now. I'll send you the address." The next night, I took an Uber to her apartment. It was a modern building, one of those with a 24-hour doorman and a gym on the ground floor, the kind of place that cost at least $5,000 in rent, money that probably came from my husband. I went up to the 8th floor. I took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. Vanessa opened the door smiling. She was wearing jeans and a simple white blouse, hair loose. She looked casual, relaxed. "Martha, come in, come in." She stepped aside to let me pass. I entered and immediately realized something was wrong. There was another person in the living room. A woman of about 40, impeccable gray suit, black hair tied in a severe ponytail. She was sitting on the sofa, a black leather folder on her lap, and when she saw me, she stood up with a professional smile. "Mrs. Collins, pleasure. I am Ms. Pierce, the attorney." She extended her hand. I felt my blood freeze. I looked at Vanessa. "You said it was dinner." "And it is." Vanessa closed the door behind me. "But I thought it was important to have Miss Pierce here to make everything official, you know? Avoid future misunderstandings." Misunderstandings. This was an ambush. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing my fear. So I shook the lawyer's hand and sat in the chair Vanessa indicated. The dinner table was set. Plates, silverware, glasses. But I knew that was just scenery. No one there was interested in food. Then Ms. Pierce began opening the folder and taking out several documents. Ms. Vanessa sought me out to guide her regarding the succession of Mr. Richard Miller. "There is a will," I said, keeping my voice firm. "Everything is already decided." "Yes, we are aware of the will. The lawyer flipped through some papers. "But Miss Vanessa believes that, considering she is the only biological daughter of the deceased and that you have no direct heirs, the most sensible thing would be to make a friendly agreement for immediate partition." Friendly agreement. What a joke. "The law guarantees me the totality of the assets while I live," I replied. "That was what Richard wanted. That was what we registered." Vanessa sat next to me, took my hand as if we were intimate friends. "Martha, no one wants to leave you on the street," she said with a sugary voice that gave me nausea. "But let's be realistic. You are 67 years old. You don't need 3 pharmacies, 2 luxury apartments, a beach house. It's too much property for a single person." "Property that I helped build," I shot back, pulling my hand away. "You helped, sure," Vanessa agreed, but there was condescension in her tone. "But they were my father's pharmacies. It was his life's work, and I am his blood." Again that phrase, blood. As if love, partnership, 17 years of marriage were worth nothing compared to DNA. Ms. Pierce cleared her throat. "Ms. Vanessa has prepared a division proposal that we believe to be more than fair." She pushed a paper in my direction. I took the document and started reading. With every line, my indignation grew. Vanessa wanted the beach house in Montauk, estimated value $3.2 million. The house I renovated, where I chose every piece of furniture, every painting, every detail. 60% of the shares of the 3 pharmacies, valued at $8 million in total. The pharmacies where I invested $2 million of my money, where I worked side by side with Richard. The 2 apartments on the Upper East Side, $2.5 million each, that we bought together with our money from our savings. The Mercedes-Benz, valued at $150,000, the car I gave Richard for his birthday in 2018. And there was more. She wanted furniture, works of art, the porcelain dinner service I inherited from my mother, even the Rolex watch I bought for Richard on our 10th anniversary. I raised my eyes from the paper and looked at Vanessa. She was watching me with that calm expression, as if she were doing me a huge favor. "Are you insane?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "Martha, please, let's keep calm," Ms. Pierce intervened. "Calm?" I was shaking now. "She wants to strip me of everything. Everything I built. Everything I earned." "None of that is yours," Vanessa said. And now the mask had fallen. Her voice was cold, hard. "Do you understand that? None of that is yours. They were my father's assets. You are just the second wife, a companion for his final years. But I am his blood." I stood up, my legs weak, but my pride held me up. "I am not signing this." "Then we'll settle it in court," Vanessa also stood up. "And I assure you it will be much more expensive and painful for you. I have time, I have health, I have age in my favor. And you? You have what, Martha? How many more years ahead?" The cruelty of those words cut me like a blade. I took my purse and walked to the door. "My lawyer will be in touch," I said, without looking back. And I left that apartment with a heart beating so hard I thought it would explode. The war was declared. But what would Vanessa do next? And how far was she willing to go to destroy me? In the days following that dinner, my phone became my worst enemy. Vanessa called every day, sometimes 2, 3 times a day, early morning, lunchtime, at night, as if she were marking her territory, reminding me she was there, waiting, pressuring. "Have you thought about the proposal?" she would ask, without even saying hello. "I'm not going to accept," I would repeat, and hang up. But she would call back, and call, and call. I blocked the number. She called from other numbers, from friends' phones, from public phones, from unknown numbers. It was psychological stalking that left me exhausted. One afternoon, I was at the main pharmacy, the one Richard founded over 30 years ago in Queens, talking to Mr. Adler, the manager who had worked with us forever, when Vanessa simply appeared. She walked through the door as if she owned the place, heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. "I came to do an inspection," she announced, loud enough for all the customers to hear. Mr. Adler looked at me, confused. I felt my face heat up. "Vanessa, you can't just show up here and—" "I can, yes," she interrupted me, pulling her cell phone from her bag. 50% of these pharmacies are mine by right. Or do you think you can stop me from seeing what is mine?" Customers were watching. Employees were whispering. I felt the humiliation burn my skin. "Let's talk outside," I asked, trying to maintain composure. "No, I want to see the rent, the tax books, the accounts. Now." Mr. Adler stepped forward. "Miss Vanessa, with all due respect, you do not have legal authorization to—" "Authorization?" She laughed, loud and theatrical. "I am the owner's daughter. This one here," she pointed at me, "is just the widow who wants to keep everything my father built alone." Alone. As if I hadn't invested $2 million. As if I hadn't spent entire afternoons helping choose suppliers, negotiating prices, reorganizing the store layout. I left that pharmacy with my head down, feeling the pitying eyes of the employees on my back. But it was at Aunt Vivian's birthday, Richard's sister, that the humiliation reached another level. Vivian was turning 60. Before, I would have been invited with affection, treated like family. But this time, the invite arrived via WhatsApp, 3 days before the party, like a social obligation. I thought about not going, but a stubborn part of me refused to hide. I had done nothing wrong. I wouldn't behave as if I had. The party was in a hall in Brooklyn Heights. When I arrived, I realized from the eyes that they already knew. Vanessa had done her ant work, spreading the poison. "Look who arrived," I heard someone whisper, "the millionaire widow." I tried to greet Vivian. She was polite, but cold. None of the tight hugs from before. None of the "how I missed you, Martha" of old times. Vanessa was in the center of the room, surrounded by cousins, aunts, friends. When she saw me, her eyes shone. She had waited for this moment. She stood up, stumbled a little, she was clearly drinking, and came in my direction. "Aunt Vivian," she shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look who had the courage to show up." The room fell silent. "Vanessa, let's not make a scene," Vivian tried to intervene, but was weak in her voice. "Scene? Me?" Vanessa brought her hand to her chest. "Dramatic. I just want everyone to know that this woman is trying to rob me. My father barely got cold in the grave, and she already wants to keep everything." "That is not true." My voice came out trembling, but firm. "There is a will. Your father left everything clear." "Will that you manipulated him to make," she screamed, and now tears were running down her face. "My father was sick, vulnerable, and you took advantage." People started to murmur. Some agreed with Vanessa. Others seemed uncomfortable, but said nothing. "You never loved my father," Vanessa continued, voice breaking. "You just wanted his money, and now you want to leave me with nothing. Me, his daughter, his blood." I should have responded. I should have defended myself. But the words died in my throat because I realized something terrible. Half the people in that room believed her. I left the party before they started singing Happy Birthday. I cried the whole way home. But the worst was still to come. 2 weeks later, I received a call from the caretaker of the beach house in Montauk. "Mrs. Collins, Miss Vanessa is here." Connie spoke low, nervous. "She brought a locksmith and is trying to change the locks. She says the house is hers now. I don't know what to do." My heart raced. "Connie, don't let her do anything. I'm calling the police." I caught the next bus to Montauk. It took almost 3 hours. When I arrived, it was already late afternoon. Vanessa had gone. But the disaster was done. The lock on the front door had been changed. I couldn't enter my own house. Connie had to call another locksmith to help me. And when I finally entered, I saw photos. All the photos of me that were on the stairs, in the frames, on the walls, torn, thrown on the floor, trampled. Photos of me and Richard on the beach, on our wedding anniversary, traveling through Europe, all destroyed. But the photos of the first wife, Anna Beth, were intact. Vanessa had put up more. On the wall, on the coffee table, in the master bedroom, as if she were erasing my existence from that place. Connie was crying. She told the neighbors that you were an intruder, she said, ashamed, that the house was always the Miller family's and that you were taking advantage. I sat on the sofa, our sofa, and finally I let the tears fall. I didn't have children to defend me. I didn't have a big family to make noise, to pressure, to show that I mattered too. I only had myself. And in that moment, I felt smaller than ever. The next day, I received the judicial notification. Vanessa was opening probate proceedings, requesting to be the administrator. She wanted legal control over all assets while the process ran. I read those papers and understood. She wasn't going to stop. She was going to destroy me, humiliate me, take everything from me until I had no more strength to fight. I grabbed the phone and called Mr. Harrison. "I need to end this," I said, voice broken. "I can't take it anymore." On the other end of the line, he sighed. "Martha, you have rights. Don't do something crazy." But I was already tired of fighting. Or at least, that was what Vanessa thought. Rock bottom arrived on a common Tuesday in March. I had gone to the main pharmacy to pick up my blood pressure medication. Simple, routine thing. The pharmacy where Richard started everything, where I spent so many afternoons helping, where I knew every employee by name, or at least thought I knew. When I pushed the glass door, the bell rang like always. The air conditioning, cold, hit my face. The smell of hand sanitizer and medicine was as familiar to me as the smell of my own home. I walked to the counter, where Jessica, a girl who had worked with us for 5 years, was at the computer. "Hi, Jessica. Came to pick up my prescription for losartan." She raised her eyes, and something changed in her face. A constraint, a tension. "Ah, Mrs. Collins, it's just that—" "Well, what happened?" "Miss Vanessa is here, in the back office." My stomach dropped. "And—" Jessica bit her lower lip. "I can't serve you without consulting her first." I stood there, processing those words. An employee I myself had helped hire was telling me she needed authorization to sell me medicine. "Jessica, this pharmacy is still mine too," I said, trying to keep calm. "I know, Mrs. Collins, but—" At that moment, the door to the back office opened. Vanessa came out, followed by her lawyer, Ms. Pierce, and 2 other people I didn't know, probably accountants or auditors. Vanessa was wearing a beige tailored suit, high heels, hair tied in an impeccable bun. She looked like an executive doing an inspection. When she saw me, she stopped. A slow smile formed on her lips. "What a surprise to see you here." "I came to get my medicine," I replied, feeling the eyes of all the employees and customers on me. "Ah, right." Vanessa walked to the counter, stood next to Jessica. "Jessica, you can serve the—" She paused on purpose. "Customer. Customer. Not Mrs. Collins. Not the owner's wife. Customer." "I want to separate my medications." Her hands were shaking. Vanessa turned to Ms. Pierce and the others. "Take the opportunity to meet the person who is trying to keep everything my father built," she said loud, very loud, so everyone would hear. "This here is Martha, the woman my father supported in the last years of his life. Now she wants to keep the pharmacies, the real estate, everything he built, and everything she claims she built." A lady who was waiting for service looked at me with disapproval. "Vanessa, your father and I built all this together." My voice came out low, but firm. She laughed, a short, cruel laugh. "Together?" She turned to the others as if I had told a joke. "She thinks because she married a vulnerable widower, she has a right to his life's work. I invested $2 million in these pharmacies." I spoke louder now. Anger was starting to overcome humiliation. "Money from the sale of my own company." $2 million, Vanessa repeated with scorn. "And you think $2 million gives you the right to $8 million in pharmacies, to real estate worth over $10 million. What interesting math." Ms. Pierce put a hand on her arm as if trying to calm her. But I saw. It was theater. All of that was rehearsed theater. "My father was very kind," Vanessa continued, her voice getting higher, more emotional. "He pitied you, a lonely woman, no children, no family, so he took you in, gave you a home. And now you want to take everything from his daughter, from the person who really mattered to him? Tears started to burn my eyes. No, I wasn't going to cry there. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. But my throat was closed, my chest tight. "Mr. Adler," Vanessa called the manager, who was near the register, clearly uncomfortable. "You knew my father, right? How many years did you work at this pharmacy before he married her?" Mr. Adler looked like a cornered animal. "Miss Vanessa, I don't think—" "How many years?" she insisted. 30 years, he replied softly. 30 years, Vanessa repeated, looking at me. "And you? How many years did you have with him? 17? And you think 17 years gives you the right to 30 years of work?" I took the medications Jessica had put on the counter. My hands shook so much, I almost dropped them. "Jessica, you can put it on my tab," my voice came out choked. "Actually," Vanessa interrupted, "no, she's going to pay in cash. Ms. Pierce, can you note that? All privileges she had here are over. Starting today, she is a regular customer, and if she doesn't have money to pay, she doesn't take it." The silence that fell over the pharmacy was deafening. I opened my wallet with trembling fingers, took out $50 and put it on the counter. The tears finally overflowed, running down my face. I left that pharmacy. The pharmacy I helped renovate, where I chose the paint colors for the walls, where I passed countless hours beside Richard, feeling as if I had been stabbed. I sat on a bench in the square across the street and cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since the day Richard died. Sounds that came from the bottom of the soul, making my whole body shake. People passed and stared, some with pity, others with curiosity. I didn't care. How had I gotten there? How had I allowed it to reach this point? I grabbed my cell phone and called Mr. Harrison. He answered on the third ring. "Martha, is everything okay?" "No," my voice came out broken. "Everything is not okay. I want to end this, Harrison. I want to sign what she wants and end this. I can't take it anymore." There was a silence on the other end. "Martha, breathe. Tell me what happened." I told him. Between sobs, I told him everything. The humiliation in the pharmacy, Vanessa's words, the eyes of the employees. When I finished, Mr. Harrison sighed deeply. "Come to my office tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I need to show you some things, important things Richard left prepared." "What things?" "Tomorrow, Martha. I need you to trust me. Do you trust me?" I wiped the tears, took a deep breath. "I trust you." "Then come tomorrow. And Martha, Richard loved you truly. He knew exactly who his daughter was, and he protected you. You just have to trust the process." I hung up the phone and sat there, looking at the pharmacy across the street. Vanessa was at the door now, talking to someone on the phone, laughing. And for the first time in months, something beyond the pain began to grow inside me. Anger, determination. Richard wouldn't have wanted to see me like this, shattered, humiliated, defeated. He would have wanted me to fight. And that was exactly what I was going to do. What did Mr. Harrison have to show me, and what protection had Richard left prepared? I arrived at Mr. Harrison's office at 9:45 in the morning, 15 minutes early because I hadn't slept all night. His office was in an old building in Midtown, one of those with a gated elevator and creaking hardwood floors. But Harrison and Associates was one of the most respected firms in New York when it came to probate and inheritance. Richard had known him for over 20 years. The secretary, Mrs. Celia, received me with a warm smile. "Mrs. Collins, so good to see you. Mr. Harrison is waiting for you." I entered his room full of old books and strong coffee, mahogany shelves packed with legal codes, a huge desk covered in files. Harrison stood up as soon as he saw me. He must have been in his early 60s, white hair, gold-rimmed glasses, wearing a navy blue suit and discreet tie. "Martha," he shook my hand with both of his. "Sit here." I sat in the leather armchair in front of the desk. He went back to his chair and observed me for a few seconds. "Are you okay?" I thought about lying, saying yes, but what was the point? "No, I'm destroyed." He nodded as if he already knew. I'm going to show you some things, but before that, I need you to listen to me carefully. Everything I am going to say now is strictly confidential. Neither Vanessa, nor her lawyer, nor anyone can know. Understood? My heart sped up. Understood. Harrison opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder, placed it on the table between us. Do you remember the last time you were here with Richard? Of course I remember. It was in May of 2020, at the height of the pandemic. We came to make the will because Richard was paranoid about COVID, thinking any of us could die. Remember that day after you left, Richard stayed more than an hour with me? I frowned. He stayed? He didn't tell me that, because he asked for secrecy. Harrison opened the folder. Richard knew his daughter better than you imagine, Martha. He knew exactly who Vanessa was. I felt a tightness in my chest. What do you mean? Harrison pulled a yellowed envelope from the folder, handwritten, with Richard's handwriting. He left a letter, to be opened only if Vanessa tried to contest the will or harm you in any way. My eyes filled with tears instantly. You can read it. Harrison pushed the envelope in my direction. I took it with trembling hands, opened it. Inside, 2 handwritten pages, Richard's unmistakable handwriting slightly crooked with that characteristic R. My dearest Martha, if you are reading this, it means Vanessa did exactly what I always feared she would do. It means she attacked you, humiliated you, tried to take from you everything we built together. I need you to know something. I always knew who my daughter really was. Since Annabeth died, I saw Vanessa transform into a bitter, self-interested person, incapable of genuine love. I tried to change that. I failed. She only sought me out when she needed money, never asked how I was, never showed real interest in my life. And when I met you, when finally I was happy for real, after years of loneliness, she hated you. Not because you were bad, but because you were good. And she can't stand seeing goodness. Martha, you were the best thing that happened in my life. You gave me love, partnership, purpose. You invested your own money in our companies, not because you had to, but because you believed in us. You transformed our beach house into a home. You made me want to live longer. That's why I left everything prepared. Trust Harrison. He knows what to do. And when Vanessa thinks she won, he will show her that underestimating you was the worst mistake of her life. I love you, today and always. Richard. I finished reading and couldn't stop crying. It was as if Richard were there, in the room, hugging me, telling me everything was okay. Harrison waited for me to compose myself, pushed a box of tissues in my direction. There is more, he said, taking other documents from the folder. Richard came here 5 times in the last 3 years, always alone, and he went preparing everything meticulously. He placed the first document in front of me, acknowledgement of investment registered at the notary. Richard declared, in writing, that you invested $2 million in the pharmacies between 2010 and 2015. With this, you are not just a wife, you are a de facto partner. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Harrison placed another document. Deed of the Montauk House. Look here, he pointed. Joint purchase. You paid $1.2 million of the renovation with traceable money from your personal account. It's all documented with invoices, receipts, everything. Another document. The apartments on the Upper East Side. Joint purchase. 50% yours, 50% his. Current market value, $5 million. More documents. There were so many, my head spun. And there is this here. Harrison took a different paper with official stamps. Vanessa doesn't know, but Richard changed some things 6 months before dying. When he was diagnosed with cancer, he came here and said, Harrison, I need to guarantee that Martha isn't destroyed. What did he do? My voice came out almost in a whisper. He created a conditional transfer contract. If Vanessa insisted on keeping the assets, she could keep them, but she would have to pay you, in cash, the exact value of everything you invested and have a right to by division of assets, with interest, correction, everything. I started to understand. How much? Harrison opened a notebook with detailed calculations. Initial investment in the pharmacies, $2 million. With correction, $2.8 million. Investment in the beach house, $1.2 million. With appreciation, $1.7 million. Half share of the apartments, $2.5 million. Half share of other marital assets, $1.8 million. Plus some minor items. He turned the notebook to me. The total was circled in red. $6,850,000. Almost $7 million, I murmured, incredulous. Exact, $6,850,000. Harrison smiled for the first time. Vanessa can keep everything, Martha. The pharmacies, the house, the apartments, the car, everything. But she is going to have to pay you that amount within 30 days. Otherwise, everything reverts to you automatically with a fine of 20%. I felt something grow inside me, something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. She doesn't have that money, I said. I know. Richard knew it too. The pharmacies are worth $8 million, but they are operational. She can't sell quickly without losing a lot of money. The beach house is worth $3 million, but the market is slow. The apartments are rented with long contracts. She would have to break contracts, pay fines. She would have to give up, I finished the sentence. Or get almost $7 million in a month. Harrison leaned back in his chair. And from the information I have, Vanessa barely has $10,000 in her account. I fell silent, processing everything. So, the plan is, I agree to transfer everything, but put these conditions. Exactly. She is going to think she won. She's going to sign thinking she destroyed you. And only when her lawyer reads Clause 15 out loud is she going to understand the trap. And if she appeals, says it was coercion, it won't stick. Everything is legal, documented, fair. You are only receiving what is yours by right. Harrison leaned forward. Richard protected you, Martha. Now you just need to trust and follow the plan. I took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt strong. Let's do it. I called Vanessa 3 days later. I let the phone ring 4 times before she picked up. I wanted her to feel I was reluctant, defeated. Ah, Martha. Her voice was surprised, but already loaded with anticipated victory. Hi, Vanessa. I made my voice sound tired, broken. I need to talk to you. About the inheritance, the assets. I took a deep breath as if it hurt to say it. You won. Silence on the other end. Then a sigh that sounded almost relieved. Finally, you fell into reality. I swallowed the anger. I'm tired of fighting, Vanessa. Tired of lawsuits, of humiliations, of everything. I just want peace. Great, her voice perked up. My lawyer can prepare the documents and... They are already ready, I interrupted. My lawyer already prepared everything. Just need to schedule the signing. Another silence. This time, I sensed a hint of suspicion. Your lawyer prepared it? Yes, Mr. Harrison. He made a complete transfer contract. You get the beach house, the pharmacies, the apartments, the car, everything. Like you wanted. And what do you get? I'm going to have some minor things, the apartment where I live, some savings, enough to live my final years in peace. I let my voice break a little. It's just what I want, Vanessa. Peace. She laughed, a short laugh of scorn. Should have accepted that from the start, would have avoided so much suffering. I bit my tongue hard. Can we schedule for next week, Wednesday, at my lawyer's office? Wednesday is great. I'm bringing Ms. Pierce, of course. Of course, I agreed. Until Wednesday, then. I hung up and looked at Mr. Harrison, who was sitting on the other side of the desk, watching. She took the bait, he said. Now we just have to wait. The week that followed was the longest of my life. I slept poorly every night, dreaming of scenarios where everything went wrong, where Vanessa discovered the plan, where I was humiliated again. But on Wednesday morning, I got ready with care. I wore a simple gray blouse and black pants, nothing flashy. I wanted to look tired, defeated, resigned. I arrived at Mr. Harrison's office at 2 in the afternoon. Vanessa arrived at 2:15, accompanied by Mrs. Pierce, and bringing someone else. A guy of about 30, handsome, blue dress shirt, too much gel in his hair. He was holding Vanessa's hand. "This is Kyle," she introduced him with a wide smile. "My boyfriend. He wanted to come to support me in this difficult moment." Difficult moment. As if signing papers to rob a widow was difficult. Kyle greeted me with a soft handshake and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Pleasure, Mrs. Collins." We all sat around the large conference table. Mr. Harrison on one side, me next to him, Vanessa, Kyle, and Ms. Pierce on the other. It was like a war negotiation table. Ms. Pierce opened an executive folder, took off her reading glasses, and took the documents Mr. Harrison had sent. "Let's review," she said, passing her eyes quickly over the pages. Very quickly. Too quickly. She was confident. So confident she didn't even bother to read with attention. She just skimmed over, checking the main items. Beach house in Montauk, total transfer to Ms. Vanessa. Correct. She made small checks with the pen. 60% of the shares of the pharmacies. Correct. Apartments on the Upper East Side, both to Ms. Vanessa. Mercedes-Benz. Correct. Vanessa leaned in to look too, a permanent smirk on her lips. "It's perfect," she said, almost singing. "Finally you understood how things should be from the start." Kyle kissed her cheek. "I'm proud of you, babe. You defended your rights." Rights. I wanted to vomit. Mr. Harrison remained impassive beside me, just watching, waiting. Then Ms. Pierce closed the folder, satisfied. "I think we can proceed with the signatures. Mrs. Collins, are you absolutely sure you want to do this? Because once signed, there is no turning back." I looked her in the eyes. "I am sure." "Great." She pushed the documents in my direction. "Sign here, here, and here." I picked up the pen, the same Mont Blanc Richard gave me, positioned it over the first dotted line, and that was when Mr. Harrison said, "Mrs. Collins, are you sure? You can still reconsider. You don't have to do this." It was part of the theater, but Vanessa didn't know. She laughed loud. "Harrison, for the love of God, the woman already decided. Don't try to manipulate her anymore." "I'm not manipulating," Mr. Harrison kept his voice calm, "just guaranteeing that my client understands completely what she is signing." "She understands," Vanessa shot back. "She finally understood she has no right to anything." Kyle laughed along. Ms. Pierce gave a small smile. "Please," and I signed. First page, second, third, fourth. My signature remaining registered on each of those sheets. When I finished, I pushed the documents back. "Done," I said, and let my voice sound defeated. Vanessa practically came out of her chair to grab the papers. "Now me?" She took her own pen, a Mont Blanc, brand new, and started signing too. She signed fast, with exaggerated flourishes, smiling at every page. "Finished," she said when she was done, throwing the pen on the table. "Finally finished." Ms. Pierce took the documents to give the last check. Perfect. She began storing everything in the folder. "In 2 business days, we will make the registration of transfers and—" "Ms. Pierce," Mr. Harrison interrupted her. His voice was calm, but had something in it that made everyone look. "Yes?" "Could you do the favor of reading out loud Clause 15 of the contract so that all present have complete knowledge of the agreement?" Ms. Pierce blinked. "Clause 15? Yes, page 9. It's an important clause. I would like everyone to hear it." Vanessa frowned. "What clause is this? Didn't you review everything?" She looked at the lawyer. Yes, I reviewed it." Ms. Pierce opened the folder again, slightly irritated. "It's just a standard clause regarding—" She stopped speaking. I saw the exact moment her eyes read the words. I saw the color disappear from her face. "Ms. Pierce?" Vanessa noticed the change. "What is it?" Ms. Pierce swallowed hard, looked at Mr. Harrison, then at me. "You can read out loud, please," Mr. Harrison insisted, politely but firmly. "It is important." Mrs. Pierce's hands shook slightly as she held the paper. Kyle looked from one to the other, confused. Vanessa started to get pale. "What is happening?" she asked, voice rising a pitch. "Well, Ms. Pierce?" Ms. Pierce, with failing voice, started to read. Clause 15. The transfer of the mentioned assets is conditioned to the immediate payment of $6,850,000. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair almost fell over. What? And it was in that moment that I, for the first time in months, smiled. A small, discreet smile, but of victory. Ms. Pierce continued reading, and with every word her voice got weaker. Referring to investment of $2 million in the Richard Miller pharmacies between the years of 2010 and 2015, with monetary correction totaling $2.8 million. Stop, Vanessa screamed, slamming her hands on the table. Stop reading that. But Mr. Harrison raised his hand. Ms. Pierce, please continue. Your client has the right to know exactly what she signed. Ms. Pierce looked at Vanessa, who was livid, then returned to the document with trembling hands. Investment of $1.2 million in the renovation and expansion of the Montauk Beach House, with current appreciation of $1.7 million. Half share of 50% of the apartments on the Upper East Side in the amount of $2.5 million. Half share of miscellaneous marital assets in the amount of $1.8 million. Kyle was open-mouthed. Vanessa gripped the edge of the table as if she were going to faint. The total payment of $6,850,000 must be made within 30 calendar days from the signing of this document via bank transfer or deposit into an account to be indicated by Mrs. Martha Collins. The room was in absolute silence. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped working. Ms. Pierce cleared her throat and continued lower. In case the payment is not made within the stipulated period, all assets mentioned in clauses 1 through 14 will automatically return to the full ownership of Mrs. Martha Collins, plus a compensatory fine of 20% and the total value herein described. Vanessa snatched the paper from the lawyer's hands. This is a trap, a damn trap! Mr. Harrison, with the calm of someone who had already won, opened his own folder. It's not a trap, Miss Vanessa. It is justice, and it is all duly proven here. He began placing documents on the table, one by one. Bank statements of transfers Mrs. Collins made to the pharmacy accounts between 2010 and 2015. Total, $2 million. All traceable, all documented. Vanessa looked at the papers as if they were venomous snakes. Invoices, receipts, and contracts for the Montauk House renovation. All paid with money from Mrs. Collins' personal account. Total invested, $1.2 million. More documents. Deeds of the Upper East Side apartments showing joint purchase, impartial community property regime. 50% right of Mrs. Collins. And more. Declaration registered at the notary, signed by your father, Richard Miller, acknowledging his wife's investments and guaranteeing her rights over the jointly built wealth. He pushed that last document to Vanessa. She took it with trembling hands. It was her father's handwriting. Unmistakable. Acknowledged. Legal. This can't be valid, she whispered. My father was sick when he signed this. Your father signed in May of 2020, Mr. Harrison shot back, 4 years before the cancer diagnosis. He was in perfect mental and physical health. There is even a medical certificate attached, confirming his full civil capacity. Miss Pierce had her head in her hands. She knew she had failed, that she should have read every word of that contract with attention. Kyle was the first to break the silence. Vanessa, how much money do you have? Well, she looked at him, eyes wide. I don't have almost $7 million. Where am I going to get almost $7 million in 30 days? The pharmacies are worth $8 million, Kyle calculated quickly. You can sell and... I can't sell in 30 days, she screamed. No one buys a company of this size in a month, and even if I sold, I would lose millions in a rushed sale. The beach house is worth $3 million, and it is in a preservation area. It has 1,000 bureaucracies for sale. It would take months. The realization fell on Vanessa like a bucket of cold water. She had signed a contract obligating her to pay almost $7 million, money she didn't have, or lose absolutely everything. "That is extortion," she turned to me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. "You can't do that to me." I stood up slowly, very slowly, and looked at her with a calm I didn't know I had. "I'm not doing anything to you, Vanessa." My voice came out firm, clear. "I am only receiving what is mine, what was always mine, what I conquered with my own sweat and money." "My father would never do that. He loved me." "Your father loved you," I agreed, "but he also knew exactly who you were. A woman who only appeared when she needed money, who abandoned her sick father in the hospital, who disrespected his widow before his body even got cold." She turned red. "You manipulated him." "I loved him," I replied. There is a profound difference between manipulation and protection. One comes from greed, the other from love. She never learned to tell them apart. And I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I took care of him. I invested my money in the life we built together. You only showed up to destroy what was left. Ms. Pierce stood up, starting to gather her documents. "Ms. Vanessa, we need to talk, in private." "No." Vanessa slammed her fist on the table. "I am not going to accept this. I am going to sue. I am going to prove she coerced, that she manipulated, that—" "Miss Vanessa," Mr. Harrison interrupted with a voice of steel. "The contract the lady just signed is legal, valid, and enforceable. You had the opportunity to read before signing. Your lawyer was present. You signed a free and spontaneous will, without any type of coercion." He crossed his arms. "And if you try to allege nullity, I can present to the judge the recordings from the security cameras of this office, showing you laughing, cracking jokes, celebrating while you signed. It won't look very good for someone claiming to have been coerced." Vanessa opened and closed her mouth several times, like a fish out of water. Kyle stepped away from her, as if she were contagious. "Vanessa, I need to go," he said, already grabbing his backpack. "What do you mean you need to go?" she screamed. "Are you not going to help me?" "Help how?" He practically ran to the door. "This is your problem. I'll call you later," and left. The boyfriend who had come to support her fled at the first difficulty. Vanessa collapsed in the chair, face in her hands. Ms. Pierce sighed deeply. "I am going to study the contract more in detail and contact you, Miss Vanessa, but I will be honest, I don't see loopholes." And she also left, taking her folder and her wounded dignity. We stayed there, me, Mr. Harrison, and Vanessa. She lifted her face. Real tears ran down now. "What do I do?" asked the broken voice. "I don't have that money." I picked up my purse. "You have 30 days to figure it out." And I left that office with my head held high, feeling for the first time in months that I had honored the memory of the man I loved. The first 10 days after the signing were silent. Vanessa didn't call, didn't show up, didn't send a message. Just silence. But I knew she was out there, desperate, trying to find a way out. And she was. On the 11th day, Mr. Adler called me. "Mrs. Collins, Miss Vanessa was here. She wanted to know how much the pharmacies would be worth in a quick sale." "And what did you say?" "That in an emergency sale, under 60 days, she would lose at least 40% of the value. Buyers know when someone is desperate." I thanked him and hung up. On the 15th day, the realtor from the beach house called me. "Martha, I received a strange call from Vanessa. She wants to sell the Montauk house urgently. Said she can accept up to $2.5 million if it's cash payment." $2.5 million for a house worth $3.2. Desperation had a price. "What did you answer?" "That the market is stalled, that a sale like that would take at least 3 months of negotiation." She hung up in my face. On the 20th day, Mr. Harrison received a call from Mrs. Pierce. He told me later while we drank coffee in his office. She tried to argue that the contract had vices, that it was unconscionable, that it harmed her client disproportionately. "And you?" "I showed that the entire value charged is referring to real investments and legitimate division. There is nothing unconscionable about paying what is owed. He took a sip of coffee. She gave up in 10 minutes. On the 25th day, Vanessa finally called me. I answered on the 4th ring. "Martha," her voice was hoarse, tired. "I need to talk to you." "I'm listening." "In person, please." We scheduled at a cafe in Brooklyn Heights, neutral, public. When I arrived, she was already there, and the difference was shocking. The black hair was unblown, tied in a simple ponytail, no makeup, deep, dark circles. Wearing jeans and a basic t-shirt, none of the designer clothes, the high heels, the superior pose. She seemed human. I sat across from her, ordered a coffee, waited. "I don't have the money," she said, straight, without beating around the bush. "I tried everything. Banks won't give loans without solid guarantees. Selling the pharmacies would take months. The beach house has no buyer. The apartments are rented. I would have to pay a millionaire fine to break the contract." I took a sip of my coffee, said nothing. "You won," she continued, and a tear rolled down. "Are you happy?" I put the cup on the table. "It wasn't about winning, Vanessa. It was about justice." "Justice," she laughed humorlessly. "You're going to leave me with nothing." "No, you are going to keep what your father left specifically for you. $200,000 that were in the checking account. It's yours, always was." She wiped the tears with the back of her hand. 200,000. My father built an empire, and I am going to keep 200,000. Your father built an empire with work, dedication, and help, I corrected. And you never wanted to know about that, only wanted the results. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something different in her eyes. Not anger, not contempt, shame. "I was horrible to you." "I didn't expect that." "It was. Why?" I was jealous," she admitted, voice low. "When my mother died, my father was destroyed, and so was I. But I was a coward. I went to my grandmother's house, left him alone. And when you appeared and made him happy again, I hated you, because you achieved something I didn't, making him smile again." I felt my chest tighten. "Vanessa, you don't need to say anything. I'm just explaining, not justifying. I was cruel, greedy, selfish, and now I am paying the price." The silence stretched between us. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I am going to sign the return of the assets. I have no choice. And I'm going to," she took a deep breath, "I'm going to look for a job. For real this time. I can't live off phantom allowance or waiting for inheritance anymore." Something in me softened. Not full forgiveness, but understanding. "Your father loved you, despite everything." "I know. And I wasted that love." The next day, the 29th day of the deadline, Vanessa appeared at Mr. Harrison's office. She signed the return of all assets. No lawyer, no witnesses. Just her, humiliated and defeated. And she kept the $200,000, her only legacy. 2 weeks later, I made a decision. I sold 2 of the 3 pharmacies for $6 million. I used part of the money to create the Richard Miller Scholarship Fund, dedicated to low-income youth who wanted to study pharmacy. I kept the original pharmacy in Queens. That one had sentimental value. It was where everything started for Richard. Mr. Adler continued as manager, and I visited every week. One of the Upper East Side apartments I donated to the National Cancer Institute in memory of Richard. The other I kept rented. The income gave me security. The Montauk house, that one was mine. I started going every month. I walked on the beach, watched the sunset on the porch, read books I never had time to read. And 6 months after the fateful day in the office, I met Vanessa again. It was by chance. I was at a competitor's pharmacy, irony of ironies, when I saw her behind the counter, wearing the store's white coat, name tag, hair tied back. She was serving an elderly lady with patience, explaining how to take the medicine. When she saw me, she paled. I thought about leaving, but something made me stay. I waited for her to finish the service, approached the counter. "Hi, Vanessa." "Martha," she swallowed hard. I work here now. 3 months? It's a good job. It's honest, she corrected, finally. We stood in silence for a moment. Are you okay? I asked. She nodded. Better than I deserve to be. And you? I am at peace. And it was true. For the first time since Richard died, I was truly at peace. Martha, she started, but stopped. No, let it go. Talk. Thank you, she said low, for not destroying me completely. You could have kept the $200,000 too. You could have sued me for defamation. You could have made my life hell. But you didn't. It wasn't about revenge, I replied. It was about dignity. She nodded, eyes watery. Your father would be proud of you, I said. And I saw the impact of the words on her. Not of the greed, not of the malice, but of this person you are becoming now. Hardworking, humble, honest. And I left that pharmacy knowing I had closed a cycle. How would my life be a year later, and what lessons did this battle teach me? Part 3. The ending. A year and 3 months after that day in Mr. Harrison's office, I woke up in the Montauk house to the sound of waves hitting the sand. It was 6 a.m. The dawn light entered through the white linen curtains, painting the room in golden tones. I got up slowly. My joints complained a little more now at 68, and went to the porch. The sea was calm, that deep blue that only the coast has. Some seagulls flew low, looking for the first fish of the day. I made coffee in the kitchen I myself had renovated, the same kitchen Vanessa wanted to take from me. I sat at the reclaimed wood table, the one Richard and I chose together at an antique fair, and I realized I was happy. Not that explosive, euphoric happiness, but a deep peace, an acceptance of what life had given me and taken away. Richard was missing every day. Sometimes I still set 2 cups without thinking. Sometimes I still turned to comment on something funny and remembered he wasn't there anymore. But the pain had changed. It wasn't that open wound bleeding anymore. It was a scar, still sore on some days, but healed. My cell phone rang. It was Kami, the caretaker. Mrs. Collins, the kids from the scholarship fund arrived. Do you want me to prepare lunch? I smiled. You can prepare it, yes. I'll be there in an hour. Once a month, the beneficiaries of the Richard Miller Fund came to spend a weekend in Montauk. There were 15 young people now, all studying pharmacy at state universities, all coming from families without means to afford studies. Seeing those boys and girls, full of dreams and determination, filled me with purpose. Richard would have loved this. He would have sat with each one, asked about classes, given advice on the pharmaceutical market. He would have been the father Vanessa never wanted him to be for her. When I arrived at the house, they were already on the porch. Laughter, animated conversations, vibrant youth filling that space that had once been just mine and Richard's. Mrs. Collins, Julia, a 20-year-old girl from the Bronx, ran to hug me. You won't believe it. I was approved for the internship at PharmaCorp. My eyes filled with tears. Julia, what pride! It's because of you, she held my hands. If it weren't for the fund, I would have given up in the second semester. I didn't have money even for the bus fare. That was the true legacy. Not the millions in properties, not the companies, but lives transformed, futures built. We spent the day all together. They told me about classes, challenges, dreams. I told stories of Richard, of how he had started with a small pharmacy and built an empire through honest work. At night, when everyone had already gone to sleep, I stayed alone on the porch. I looked at the stars and spoke low. I managed love. I protected our legacy, the way you wanted. The wind blew softly, bringing the smell of the sea air, and for a second, I could almost feel Richard there, beside me. The following week, I returned to the city. There was a meeting at the Queen's Pharmacy. When I entered, Mr. Adler received me with a huge smile. Martha, we have news. The College of Pharmacy wants to partner with us. Internship for students here at the store. That is wonderful. And look who is going to be one of the interns. He pointed to the counter. There was Julia in a white coat, organizing medications with a radiant smile. My heart almost exploded with joy. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Sender, Vanessa Miller. I hesitated before opening, but curiosity won. Martha, I write this letter after months of trying to find the right words. I will never manage to apologize enough for what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know. Today marks 6 months that I've been working at the pharmacy. It's not much, but it's honest. And for the first time in life, I feel proud of myself. Last week, I served a lady who was buying medications for a husband with cancer. She cried while talking about how much he had changed, about the fear of losing him. And I held her hand and said, "Enjoy every second, because after they go, memories are all that remain." And in that hour, I understood you. I understood my father. I understood what I left out due to greed. I knew about the scholarship fund. I knew you were helping young people realize the dream my father had. And I cried, Martha. I cried because you honored him in a way I would never achieve. Thank you for teaching me, in the hardest way possible, what really matters in life. Vanessa. I folded the letter slowly and put it in my purse. It wasn't complete forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. 3 months later, on a sunny Saturday, I was walking along the beach in Montauk when I saw a woman from afar, blonde hair in the wind, barefoot in the sand, walking slowly. Vanessa. She saw me too, stopped. We stood there, 20 meters apart, just looking at each other. Then she waved. A small, shy wave. And I waved back. We didn't approach, we didn't talk. But in that gesture there was something, acknowledgement, mutual respect, maybe one day, something resembling peace. Today, when I look back, I see the complete journey, the pain of losing Richard, the humiliation of being disrespected, the strength I discovered inside myself, the justice I conquered without losing my dignity. I learned that widow is not synonymous with victim, that age is not synonymous with fragility, that a woman who has already built an empire once knows exactly how to protect what is hers. I learned that the true legacy is not in how much money you leave, but in how many lives you transform. Richard taught me to love again at 48. He taught me that fresh starts are possible at any age. He taught me that dignity is not negotiated. And I taught Vanessa and myself that justice and compassion can walk together, that we can be strong without being cruel, that we can win without destroying. Today, at 68 years old, I wake up every day grateful. Grateful for the 17 years beside Richard. Grateful for the strength I discovered when I needed it. Grateful for the 15 lives I am helping to change through the scholarship fund. And when I look at the photo on my nightstand, me and Richard in Montauk, smiling at the camera with the sea in the background, I know he would be proud. Not because I won a legal battle, but because I kept my dignity intact from beginning to end. And this, I discovered, is the true inheritance worth leaving. This story is a work of fiction, yet woven from the common threads of human experience we all share. It reminds us that while characters may be invented, the virtues of dignity and the boundaries of respect are very real. Life often tests our grace under fire, and sometimes the quietest victories ring the loudest. Let this serve as a gentle reminder that justice isn't always about vengeance, but about standing firm in one's truth. May we all find the strength to protect our legacy with both firmness and heart. If this story touched your heart, if you also believe that dignity and respect have no age, leave your comment telling where you are watching from. Your word of support can inspire other women who are going through similar situations. Enjoy this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the button to keep following real stories of overcoming, strength, and dignity, because we all deserve to be respected in any phase of life. Until the next story, and remember, it is never too late to defend what is yours.